Welcome to my channel. I am Dr. Eva, and here I share real-life stories of medical malpractice, patient struggles, and the lessons we can all learn to protect ourselves and our families. These stories are told not to scare you, but to raise awareness, because inside hospitals, lives can change forever. Sometimes not from illness itself, but from mistakes in treatment. Today I want to begin the story of Lynn Gross, a 57-year-old woman who went into the hospital for a procedure to repair a brain aneurysm, trusting her doctors completely, but who came out with her life changed forever. Lynn had always been known as a woman full of energy. She worked, she cared for her grandchildren, and she enjoyed gardening in her backyard. She was not someone who saw herself as fragile or sick, but in the months before her diagnosis, she began to feel something was not right. She would suddenly get severe headaches that made her stop what she was doing. Sometimes her vision blurred, and other times she felt dizzy, almost like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. At first she thought it might be migraines, or maybe just fatigue, but when the symptoms became more frequent and stronger, her family insisted she see a doctor. After scans and tests, the doctors discovered the truth. Lynn had a brain aneurysm. For her, the word was unfamiliar and terrifying. The doctor explained that an aneurysm is like a weak balloon on the side of a blood vessel in the brain. If that balloon bursts, blood spills into the brain, and the result can be death or permanent brain damage. Lynn's aneurysm had not ruptured yet, but it was in a dangerous spot, and the doctors said it needed treatment. For Lynn and her family, this was overwhelming. They sat in the consultation room in shock, holding hands, trying to process what it meant. She was told there were two ways to treat it. One was brain surgery called clipping, where a surgeon opens the skull and seals the aneurysm with a small clip, and the other was coiling, a less invasive option where doctors insert a catheter through her arteries and fill the aneurysm with tiny coils to block blood flow. What Lynn did not know was that in her case, best practice would have been for both a neurosurgeon and a radiologist to review her scans together, discuss both options, and explain clearly the risks and benefits of each. Instead, only the interventional radiologist saw her scans, and he decided on coiling. A neurosurgeon was never consulted, and Lynn was never told that surgery might have been safer for her type of aneurysm. Trusting her doctor's word, she agreed to coiling, believing it was the best option. The night before her procedure, she sat with her family at home, trying to keep her fear hidden. They cooked her favorite meal, and she promised them she would be fine. Her husband tried to smile, but admitted he was nervous. Lynn told him not to worry, reminding him the doctor had said it was routine. The next morning, she entered the hospital, changed into a gown, and was prepped for the procedure. Nurses placed IVs, the anesthesiologist reassured her, and the radiologist told her everything would go smoothly. As she was wheeled into the bright operating room, she closed her eyes, whispering a prayer. For her family in the waiting room, the hours crawled by. They sat with coffee, checking the clock, telling each other it would be okay. Finally, they were told Lynn was out of surgery and in recovery. They breathed a sigh of relief, believing the danger had passed. But what they did not know was that the procedure had been more complicated than the radiologist admitted, and Lynn's real struggle was only beginning. After Lynn's procedure, her family believed she was safe. The nurse told them the coiling was done and she was resting. They hugged each other in relief, thinking the danger had passed. But inside Lynn's brain, the aneurysm was not fully sealed. Because it was wide at the base, the coils did not block it completely. This left a risk of blood leaking, something her family was never told. Lynn was taken to the intensive care unit where she lay unconscious. Hours later, when her daughter came to visit, she noticed something strange. Lynn's right arm was not moving, and when she tried to open her eyes, her face looked uneven. The nurse said it was just the anesthesia, but as time passed, Lynn became weaker. She tried to speak, but only broken words came out, and her speech was slurred. These were clear warning signs of a stroke, yet no one acted quickly. The doctors waited instead of treating it as an emergency. By the time a scan was done, the damage was already happening. Blood had leaked past the coils and part of her brain was starved of oxygen. Soon after, her family was called into a small room. A doctor came in and explained that complications had occurred. He spoke in medical terms that confused them, so Lynn's husband asked directly, "What does this mean for her?" The doctor finally admitted that Lynn had suffered a serious brain injury. Her daughter cried while her son asked if she would recover, but the answers were uncertain. The doctor only said, "We have to wait and see." In truth, the hospital staff knew the damage was likely permanent, but they avoided saying it clearly. In the ICU, Lynn opened her eyes, but she was not the same woman who had walked into the hospital. She could not move her body well, and her words came out broken. Machines beeped around her, and tubes helped her breathe and eat. Her family took turns sitting by her bed, holding her hand and telling her to stay strong. They felt shocked and betrayed. The woman who was once full of life, who cooked for them and played with her grandchildren, was now trapped in a broken body. They started asking questions. Why was she only offered coiling? Why did no neurosurgeon see her case? Why did doctors wait while she showed clear signs of a stroke? But instead of honest answers, they were given excuses. Nurses told them, it sometimes happens. Doctors said, these are known risks. No one admitted that things had been done wrong. The family felt lost, angry, and helpless. They had trusted the doctors completely, and now Lynn's life had been shattered. Lynn's family stayed by her side every day. They hoped she might get better, but the weeks passed and little changed. She could open her eyes and move her hand a little, but she could not walk, cook, or speak in full sentences. The woman they knew was gone. Her husband sat by her bed each night, holding her hand, remembering the days when she was full of life. Her daughter often cried quietly, wishing she could hear her mother's voice again. The hardest part was that Lynn seemed aware of what had happened. Sometimes tears rolled down her face when her grandchildren visited, as if she knew she could no longer play with them. Sometimes tears rolled down her face when her grandchildren visited, as if she knew she could no longer play with them. The family wanted answers. They started asking more questions at the hospital. Why was she not given surgery instead of coils? Why did no one act when she showed stroke signs? Why did they have to wait so long for a scan? Every time they asked, the doctors avoided direct answers. They repeated the same phrases. This was a known risk, or sometimes these complications happen. It was clear to the family that no one wanted to admit mistakes. Lynn was eventually moved out of the ICU and placed in a rehabilitation center, but her progress was slow. Therapists worked with her, but her speech remained broken and her movements were weak. Her family felt she had been abandoned by the system. One evening, her son said to his father, "We need to talk to a lawyer. Something isn't right." At first, the husband resisted, thinking it would not help Lynn, but the more they learned, the more convinced they became. They discovered that best practice required a neurosurgeon to be consulted before deciding on coiling. They learned that wide neck aneurysms like Lynn's often do better with clipping. They also realized that waiting during her stroke symptoms had cost precious time. Armed with this knowledge, they reached out to a malpractice attorney. The lawyer listened carefully to their story and agreed something was wrong. He explained that medical malpractice is when a doctor or hospital fails to provide the standard of care, and that failure causes harm. In Lynn's case, the lawyer believed there were multiple failures. Not giving her all the treatment options, not involving the right specialists, and not acting fast when her condition worsened. The family felt a mixture of anger and relief. They were angry that their trust had been betrayed, but relieved that someone was finally listening. The lawyer warned them the fight would be long and hard. Hospitals rarely admit fault, and their legal teams are strong, but he promised to stand with them. For the first time since the tragedy, the family felt a small spark of hope, not for Lynn to return to her old self, but for justice, and for the truth to be told. The lawyer began collecting Lynn's medical records. It was a long and tiring process because hospitals do not give up information easily. Each document revealed more about the choices that had been made. The family learned that Lynn's aneurysm was described as wide-necked, a type often not suited for coiling. Yet no one had written that surgery was even considered. They also found notes showing that when Lynn showed signs of stroke, there was a delay before action was taken. Reading those records was painful for the family. They saw in black and white how decisions had been made and how opportunities to save Lynn had been missed. The lawyer explained that the case would likely go to court unless the hospital agreed to settle. The hospital, of course, denied wrongdoing. Their lawyers argued that coiling was an accepted method and that strokes are a known complication. They claimed the doctors acted reasonably. This made the family even more determined. They knew what they had lived through. They had trusted the system, and the system had failed Lynn. Soon depositions began. Doctors were questioned under oath. The family sat through long sessions where medical experts debated what should have been done. Some experts supported the hospital, but others agreed with the family. One neurosurgeon testified that he would never have chosen coiling for Lynn's aneurysm without at least discussing surgery. Another said the delay in treating her stroke signs was unacceptable. These moments gave the family courage. Still, the process was slow and draining. Months turned into years. Legal fees mounted, and the family grew tired of repeating the painful story again and again. Yet they pushed forward, believing that justice mattered not just for Lynn, but for other patients too. During this time, Lynn remained in care. She could not return home fully because she needed help with almost everything. Nurses and aides supported her, but her family visited daily. Her grandchildren would sit by her wheelchair, telling her about school while she tried to smile. Each visit reminded the family of what had been taken from them. They knew no amount of money could give Lynn back her life. The lawsuit was not about wealth, it was about truth. It was about making sure hospitals did not hide behind excuses. The trial date finally arrived. The courtroom was tense as lawyers presented arguments. The hospital's lawyers painted the picture of a tragic but unavoidable event. The family's lawyers showed records, testimony, and expert opinions proving otherwise. The jury listened carefully. Days passed, and the family waited anxiously. At last, the case went to the jury for a decision. The family sat holding hands, hearts heavy, wondering if justice would be done. The jury returned after 2 long days of deliberation. The family sat in silence, holding their breath as the verdict was read. The courtroom felt frozen in time. The jury found that the hospital and its doctors had failed to provide the standard of care. They agreed that Lynn should have been given the option of surgery, that her stroke signs should have been treated immediately, and that these failures had caused her devastating injuries. The family wept quietly, not because they had won money, but because finally the truth had been spoken out loud. No amount could restore the life she had lost, but the family felt a sense of justice. For the first time, someone outside their circle of grief acknowledged that what had happened was wrong. After the trial, reporters asked the family for statements, but they kept their words simple. Lynn's daughter said, "We just wanted honesty. We wanted this not to happen to someone else." Her husband added, "This case was never about money. It was about accountability." The hospital released a statement expressing sympathy but did not admit fault. Still, the verdict sent a message that families deserve transparency and care. At home, Lynn's family adjusted to a new life. They built ramps, rearranged rooms, and brought her home so she could be surrounded by love. Her grandchildren learned how to help her, placing small toys in her hands and talking to her slowly so she could try to answer. It was not the same life, but it was life together. Sometimes Lynn's eyes would fill with tears when her family sat around her, and they believed she understood that they had fought for her. Over time, the lawsuit became part of their history, but not their whole story. What remained stronger was the love they carried and the lessons they learned. They became advocates for patient rights, warning others to always ask questions, to demand second opinions, and to make sure every option is explained clearly. They knew their story could not erase Lynn's suffering, but maybe it could protect another family from going through the same heartbreak. Years passed, and the family continued to care for Lynn. Her condition did not improve much, but she was present, surrounded by love, and that mattered. Each holiday, each birthday, they gathered around her wheelchair, including her in every celebration. Her story was not just one of tragedy, but also of strength, of family standing together, and of the fight for justice. In the end, Lynn's case became more than a lawsuit. It became a lesson about trust, responsibility, and the importance of truth in medicine. Thank you for listening to Lynn's story. If you found this meaningful, please support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Together, we can raise awareness about medical malpractice and stand for patient safety. Every story we share has the power to protect another life. I'll see you in the next story.